In today's show, is the next Trailblazers All-Star already on the roster? Plus, other thoughts from All-Star Weekend. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're talking all things All-Star, but instead of complaining about a wacky, overproduced Sunday night game, which we will at some point, and a somewhat lackluster All-Star Saturday night, which we might at some point as well, I want to lead with this question. As I watch the festivities play out in the Bay Area, in beautiful San Francisco, California over the weekend, I am struck by the fact that no Blazers are participating in the big game. The Blazers' representation somewhat limited, thanks in part to an injury to Scoot Henderson, but just Toumani Camara and two-way player Bryce McGowan's representing the team in the Rising Stars game on Friday night, and no representation outside of that. And I was struck by this question, and this is what I'm going to start the show with, and then we'll talk about some other things. Is the Blazers' next All-Star already on the roster? I think I've tackled this question in mailbags in the past, but the roster has changed a little bit, and I think in light of watching the midseason showcase, I have some extended thoughts I would like to share with you here. First, I think a reminder about talking about players in general is like, I tend to not talk only about players in terms of their peak. That's just not what I do on the show. I think it is unfair to the reality of how challenging it is to have an NBA career to say, like, if a player is like capable of being an all-star, continuously call them all-star level talent. I think that's unfair. It's hard to make it. And to be clear, in the 21st century, we're now in the year 2025, the Blazers have had 4 players make the all-star team. Rasheed Wallace did it twice, right at the turn of the 21st century. Brandon Roy did it thrice, LaMarcus 4 times, and Dame 7 times. It's LaMarcus Aldridge 4 times, Brandon Roy thrice, and Damian Lillard 7 appearances. I mean, it is not a common occurrence. From the year 1994 to the year 2000, the Blazers had none, until she joined the party in the year 2000. So, they had a half decade with nobody involved. They were good during that half decade. They made the playoffs. Like, It was not yet the dark years. Those were good basketball teams, at least mostly competitive basketball teams, I should say. It's hard to make the All-Star team. It's hard to make the All-Star team in the Western Conference as it currently stands, and I don't think it's necessarily getting easier, because if you look at sort of like the young players who did not make it, Luka Doncic still in the West, Ja Morant still in the West, there's guys who were not healthy this year who can make it. You look at some sort of just names that didn't make it, and Domantas Sabonis, and it's like, shoot, he certainly could be there. De'Aaron Fox as well. Obviously there's some aging stars in the Steph Currys and Kevin Durant's and LeBron Jameses of the world that will eventually bow out, but it is not going to get suddenly a bunch easier, and I think it's always going to be hard in the NBA period to make the All-Star team as a guard, because that is the deepest position in the league almost exclusively. And also it's front court, back court, so it's it's not entirely positionless, but there are slots that are specifically dedicated for bigs and specifically dedicated for guards. And obviously there's some guys who can flow in between a little bit, but if you are only in the guard spot, it is a deep group. So who on the Blazers roster could realistically make an All-Star game? Everyone. And now I will list all 15 names. I think realistically, I don't think Jeremy Grant can make an All-Star team. I think that ship has sailed. I don't think DeAndre Ayton's fairly likely to make an All-Star team. I think that ship has likely sailed, just because I don't think he has the skill set to be the best player on a good team. there's a world in which the Blazers are really stinking good, and LaMarcus Aldridge and DeAndre Ayton is like part of that really stinking good group and could be a compliment, could be the second guy or whatever who makes it. But I don't think I would bet against him making it just because of he's a dude who needs a lot of stuff created for him. And if the Blazers are going to get really good, they're going to have a really good player creating shots for DeAndre Ayton, and that player is going to be ahead of him in the pecking order. I think it's pretty unlikely Anthony Simons ever makes an All-Star team in Portland. It's just he's had some opportunities where they've given him the keys to the keys to the boat, and he has not risen to that sort of All-Star or near All-Star level. Obviously, with all of these guys, there's like a world in which they do. I'm not going to walk you through the hypothetical and all of them. These are my opinions. I don't think Jeremy Grant, I don't think DeAndre Ayton, I don't think Anthony Simons will make an All-Star team with the Portland Trail Blazers. So you're talking about younger players on the team. If you're a long-time listener to the program, shout out to my everydayers, and I bet you are if you're listening to this particular show because it's the All-Star break and they didn't have any stinking All-Stars. Like, I'm a big Toumani Camara appreciator. I have a hard time seeing Toumani Camara make an All-Star team unless the Blazers are awesome. Because, again, he's a more complimentary part. He's the type of dude who it's like, you have one All-Star, and it's like, who's their second best player? And you're like, it's Toumani Camara. He does everything. Doesn't have that sort of individual offensive creation that, like, makes for star players, and likely is not going to develop that at a very high level. But he's really good and helps you win. I could see a world in which, if the Blazers are something like on a 58-win pace, that Toumani Camara is the second All-Star, but on his own, relatively unlikely to make it, albeit a very good player, right? A very good player. Donovan Clingan, I have a hard time telling right now. He's so far away on offense as he stands that I think doesn't seem realistic, just because what he brings to do on that end right now. But like, if he reaches his defensive ceiling and he's one of the best defensive players in the league, yeah, he could make it, right? It kind of depends on how high he can rise. He's a beast in the box score. He might be an elite rebounder, an elite shot blocker. And and if he continues just to be a guy who like finishes low rolls, again, like a guy who needs stuff set up for him, yeah, maybe his box score numbers are so crazy, his defensive impact is so much, he can get there. He's so early into whatever he's going to be that I kind of will abstain from predicting. Let me be 100% clear. Why I led with only 4 players in the 21st century from the Trailblazers made the All-Star team is because the safest bet is always no. The safest bet is always no. Like, if you are betting if a dude's going to make an All-Star team, no. I saw a thing, Stephon Castle had a really nice dunk contest, and the people were saying, like, how many All-Star games will Stephon Castle make in his career? And I was like, if I had to guess right now, none, right? Like, that's the safest bet. He'll make 0, right? Because they've got De'Aaron Fox and they've got Wemby, and you're talking about a third All-Star. It's like, do I think Stephon Castle's going to be good? I do. I think he's really going to be good. But, like, you have to be realistic about how this works. Like, it isn't shade on someone to say, like, it's really challenging to make an All-Star team and the safest bet is that they won't make one. I don't personally find that insulting. You might. I apologize. I don't actually apologize. So I don't think I don't know what to do with Clingan, although I'd bet against it. So we're really talking about 3 guys. Denny, who I've said on the show before that I would bet against him making an All-Star team. Again, it's kind of the individual offense stuff. If Denny becomes a really good individual creator as an offensive player, then I could see that happening. I think he's probably been the Blazers' best player this season, but I would guess that his peak is below All-Star level. Good basketball player, helps you win games, has been the Blazers' best player this season, but like, he's young enough that he's not like at his peak. I don't mean to say that at all, and he could get better, but I think he's more in the, like, he's been in the league long enough that he's probably in the sharpening your skills portion of his growth, as opposed to like adding like massive new parts. And as he sharpens his skills, he's going to continue to become a better player, and the versatility's there, and he's very helpful in winning any individual basketball game. But in terms of like, the elite levels that it takes to get to an All-Star game, I would bet against Denny making. I don't think he would make an All-Star team. He could, but I would bet against it. So I guess you're talking about the 2 youngsters, like as you narrow it down. Shaedon Sharpe has the tools to be a pretty darn good basketball player. He has not put it together in year 3. As I stand here today, I think the safe bet is no. Shaedon Sharpe is probably not destined to be an all-star at any point during his career. He's so young, and he's talented enough in the way that all-stars get selected. Scoring is highly valued. I mentioned with Donovan Clingan, it's like I'm thinking like Rudy Gobert when he was making all-star teams and getting picked last in the all-star draft all the time. And if Donovan Clingan has like a Rudy Gobert type of ceiling, he could get there. If Scoot Henderson has if Shaedon Sharpe has like these elite level scorer type ceilings. I'm trying to think of the comp I've actually used for Shaedon Sharpe in the past in this show is Jason Richardson, who did not make an all-star team, but was like a good solid starter on a bunch of good teams for his career and won 2 dunk contests, lost a third one, I believe, to Fred Jones. Shea right now, because he hasn't made this massive leap in year 3, I would lean that he will not be on the all-star track. But he has the type of skills, which I mentioned with Toumani and Denny. It's like that individual offensive creation. Could like scoring, everyone's always going to value more. Is it more valuable to be someone who scores or more valuable to be more versatile? I think we're leaning in a league where it gets more versatile, but this sport has been and always will be about buckets. Shea's offensive ceiling remains pretty darn high, especially if he ever learns to make shots at even a slightly below average as opposed to like a 32% level. If he's like a 35% three-point shooter at some point in his career on some volume, he could be a very high-level scorer. And if he's ever becomes an above-average three-point shooter, he's going to be a really good scorer at some point. But again, like right now in year 3, I would bet against it. So, right, you might say, like, Mike, you're betting against everyone. I hate you. You're the most negative person in the world. No, I want to be realistic about how hard it is to make an all-star game. And I'm not saying, like, I'm very comfortable being wrong about this. I think I would like the Blazers to have several all-stars. So on this weekend, I could talk about several all-stars on here. So I think the last one is Scoot. Scoot's ceiling is probably all-star-ish point guard, right? He's probably Mike's an all-star team or a couple if he hits his peaks because, he's the playmaking. He's improved as a shooter this year. He's improved as a finisher this year. It's just whether he hits that level, and then you come back to the same thing with Shaedon and with Scoot and with every guard in the NBA. Guard is the deepest position in the league. It's the deepest position in the league. It's hard to make an all-star team. So I will end it here. If I had to guess, the Blazers' next all-star is not currently on the roster. But I do think they have a stable of intriguing enough youngsters in Donovan Clingan and Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson, and throw in Denny and Toumani, although they're older than that trio, but they're still on the young side, although Denny has been in the league for a while and Toumani came into the league already older. They have enough intriguing players that you could see a world in which that all-star exists. But I think for the Dennys and the Twos, they're probably not. They don't have like the mold that is like the sort of classic all-star-y type in terms of individual scoring. Obviously, Denny's probably a better scorer than Two right now by a fair margin. And Scoot and Shea are farther enough away from what they're going to be as complete players that it is hard to say. And Donovan's all-star path is so dependent on being a dominant defensive player that it is hard to say. My guess right now, as I stand here in February of 2025, is the Blazers' next All-Star is not currently on the roster. I would love to be wrong. Okay, let's talk about Blazers that were in All-Star Weekend. Bryce McGowan's, Toumani Camara, and the whole fun of All-Star Saturday night and the mess of Sunday. Join me in that second segment, won't ya? First, though, let me tell you about Hungry Root. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, you might have a recurring problem. You just don't have time. Between work, life, trying to eat healthier, you can get a little stressed out. And sometimes you might even have time to go to the grocery store and buy the things that you need. But then when you get home, you're just running out of time and energy to cook and throw in the challenge of sticking to your health goals. It's all a struggle. But perhaps for you, Hungry Root can be the game changer that you need. It's the easiest way to eat healthy without all the stress. With Hungry Root, it's like having a personal shopper and nutritionist all in one. They take care of your grocery shopping, recommending meals and groceries based on your tastes and health goals, from anti-inflammatory to high protein and gluten-free options. And the best part, every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm talking quick, healthy meals that actually taste great, all delivered straight to your door. It can be a huge time saver and make healthy eating so much simpler. You're going to love Hungry Root, and for a limited time, you can get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, and the code is LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. All right, the Blazers might not have their next All-Star on the roster. They got some intriguing young parts, and I think they've really nailed some sort of complementary youngsters, the type of players that help you win basketball games, even if they don't help you get into that midseason showcase. They are on the hunt, as I maintain, still for that tier one, whatever, top shelf star, that type of player, because they have a lot of guys who profile as useful parts to have around a top tier player. I mean, that's usually how it works. Some players aren't as good as the best players in the league, and then when you have a star, everybody looks a little bit better. It's not always how it works, but often. But while they maybe don't have their next All-Star on the roster, they did have a couple participants in the festivities over the weekend. Bryce McGowens and Toumani Camara both participated in the Rising Stars tournament on Friday. Scoot Henderson missed the event after sustaining a sprained ankle on Monday. He was ruled out of Wednesday's game in Denver, and then he traveled with his buddies to San Francisco. He did not participate in the events. So the little bit of Blazers action we saw happened early on Friday evening with Bryce McGowens hitting a game winner to beat Toumani's team in the opening game of the Rising Stars tournament. It was a couple semifinals played to 40, and then a championship game played to 25. And Bryce's team lost in the championship, and in the race to 25, and they did not get to go to the Sunday game, the big game. But I thought the Rising Stars tournament actually was a good little look at this is the format that we're going to see again on Sunday when we play when they play with the All-Stars and in the big game on Sunday evening, or the big competition, I think is the right word, on Sunday evening. And I thought like Friday's showcase of it was actually pretty good. It was pretty good. It was, the games were competitive. Obviously you get that buzzer beater at the end from Bryce. Toumani, more on him briefly, and then we'll get back to Bryce's buzzer beater. He came out firing. He came out firing. He hit a shot, blocked a shot. It was like right away. It was like Toumani played with energy, and the type of energy that you've come to appreciate with Toumani Camara. And then it was like, hey, is anyone else on the Two's team going to step up? And they did eventually, but I thought Toumani was particularly loud right out of the gate, and then he kind of quieted down. It's like, it's a hard game for like Toumani to like, you know, what he's best at is kind of like blowing up someone's set, right? Like staying attached around a screen. And it's like, no, it's not like that exactly. Or like taking a charge, drawing like an offensive foul, being like a crusty defender. He's physical and annoying. That's not the space necessarily for Toumani's greatest gifts on the court right now. But you still saw the hustle, and obviously he's like physical and strong and athletic and all those things. But it came down to a final shot, playing to the target score, and Bryce McGowens, who had a nice game for the G League team, got the ball on the left wing, pump fake, gets his man in the air, and but like not all the way in the air, so his defender has like jumped past him, but is still like sort of contesting. So Bryce hits like a leaning, not high jumping 3-pointer cash. The guy who's guarding him was like, like, that's a tough shot. And it was a tough shot, a game winner. Everybody smiled and celebrated. It was a really fun moment. And again, like a good sense of what was to come on Sunday night. I thought the Rising Stars stuff was good. I have typically avoided Rising Stars at all costs. I think it had really devolved into an awful game. And I think it was All-Star Friday night. It was like something I was just like, I will skip this. I was going to watch it obviously because the Blazers were involved, but I thought it was good, pretty good basketball, all things considered. Then we get to All-Star Saturday. I have always been an All-Star Saturday night over Sunday person. Maybe not always. I don't know what I was like as a really little kid, but in my adulthood, I have preferred the 3-point contest and the dunk contest to Sunday's festivities. I think they're more fun. I liked Nate Robinson and and Dwight Howard. Obviously, there has been some lulls in the dunk contest. I thought Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon reminded us of how special it could be again. And quite frankly, dunking mercenary Mac McClung is totally fine with me. It is weird that the NBA's dunking mercenary is Mac McClung, who is very specifically not an NBA player. He's like the classic, like, you know, he's a good G League guy who just like can't get a spot in the league and probably never will, but he is so freaking good at dunking that it's like you bring him to the event and he's fun. I thought he was fun last year and had some great dunks, and this year he was a little prop heavy, but the dude has charisma. He has swagger. And what he had that Matas Buzelis and Andre Jackson Jr., who competed in the dunk contest, had was he made the damn dunks. He's fun. Like, he jumped over a car. He picked a basketball up off of his friend spinning on a hoverboard, and a mild homage to Aaron Gordon, and dunked 2 basketballs at the same time. He jumped over Evan Mobley because he can jump really high. Like, he's a dude who leaps. He's a dude who leaps, and he was good at it. And I thought Mac McClung is a good showman, and it's a little bit weird dunking mercenary, but I enjoyed the dunks, and it was fun. The rest of All-Star Saturday Night, the skills competition had like Chris Paul and Wemby kind of trying to like game the system and not actually compete. That was really a really weird moment. And the 3-point contest would have been great, but Buddy Hield needed to make all of his final shots on the last rack, and he just missed one of them. And I felt like during the broadcast, they didn't realize how close he was. They weren't like doing the math in real time, but I, pretty good at arithmetic, was able to be like, if he makes all of these, he wins. And he missed one of his last 3 shots. And I was like, well, that's it. And they were like, you think he's going to come up short? Thank you. That's true, Reggie. He is actually, that's how the math works. And if he made all of them, he would have won. If not, and he didn't. So it came down to literally to the final rack of basketballs, and he missed them. I thought that was, a decent showing in the 3-point contest, although there were some bricklayers in there, and Damian Lillard did not win a third in a row. Tyler Hero, congratulations, gets that 3-point contest championship. I like All-Star Saturday Night. I like it. Sunday's game. Oh, goodness. Let's talk about it to close the show. Join me in the third segment, rather. Let me say this before we go. The game itself was mostly fine. Okay, join me in the third segment. Let's talk about what wasn't mostly fine. First, though, let's talk FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And when the games tip off, guess what? NBA action is just getting started. So when we're back from the All-Star break later this week, there's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the NBA games you're watching. So even if you miss opening tip or you want to get in on the action of a fourth quarter comeback, you can still do it right there on the FanDuel app, where you can find the latest box scores and you can find live play-by-play. You can even combine live bets in a same-game parlay. All of it's there from the moment the game starts to the moment the game ends, and everywhere in between. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you can get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your first shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. So, I watched Friday night's action live. I actually missed part of it to put my small child to bed, but I watched it. I caught up to live. I watched Saturday night's action live. I did not watch the All-Star game live. I watched it pretty late at night on Sunday. I'm recording this pretty late at night on a Sunday. I went and watched a basketball game in Eugene, Oregon that I will talk about later this week. I saw Rutgers play basketball. They competed in a game, I can tell you that much. There was a basketball game played in Eugene, and I was in attendance. So I watched this game on record. I had mostly avoided social media spoilers. But so I did have the luxury of fast forwarding through parts of the All-Star game, and quite frankly, it needed it. There was too much production. The game itself followed the similar format that we saw on Friday night, with smaller teams playing to a target score and then two teams advancing to a championship. And so you got like the semifinals. And I thought the game itself was mostly fine. I thought it was a little more competitive than recent All-Stars, probably a lot more competitive than some of the very recent ones that really devolved. But like, the basketball itself was fine. There was just too much production. And I didn't even watch all of it because I was watching it on DVR or whatever. That's probably not what it's called anymore. I was fast forwarding through it because I had recorded it digitally. There was too much Kevin Hart. It's too much Kevin Hart. I personally probably need, with my basketball, 0 Kevin Hart. You might need a little bit more than 0, but I need 0 Kevin Hart. I don't need any when I'm watching basketball. I don't need any Kevin Hart. None would be the right amount for me. Then there was a long section that I did watch in between games where like they paid homage to the TNT guys because that show is dying. It's going to end, or at least the TNT version of it is going to go away, and that's sad. I have not really been an inside the NBA person over the last 5 or 8 years. That program's not for me. I am a person with opinions. That's not where I get my basketball stuff. But those gentlemen, Kenny and Chuck, and Shaq to some extent, but Kenny and Chuck and Ernie, like, they've been narrating my appreciation of basketball games for 2 decades. They're a part of the whole story. I don't necessarily mind giving them their flowers and celebrating them, and even them doing their own little bit of navel-gazing about how special they are. This is their last All-Star game they'll broadcast. Kevin Harlan had a really nice moment on Saturday evening, kind of saying goodbye as the voice of 25 consecutive All-Stars. And like, yeah, and the TNT guys, you can kind of have their moments, and like, to me, that's fine. But why then? Why are we doing it at the All-Star game? Why are we doing it in between the games? It's just too much production, and Kevin Hart's talking during the games, and they're kind of clowning on the game itself, and it's just so much. There's a concert break in the middle of it. There's music, and there's like an active sideshow with Kevin Hart during the game, and then there's like a whole production element about talking about the beauty of this wonderful and funny television. It's like there's just so much non-basketball stuff that by the time we got back to the games, like, I think we're pulling this thing in a lot of different directions, and it's starting to get unraveled, and it kind of took away from what had been, again, like a largely pretty competitive, pretty good version of basketball with just like too many breaks, too long, even if I could fast forward through some of it, too long. And it brought me back to this quote. Friend of the podcast and writer of the Locked On NBA National Newsletter, and one of the great sports writers in America, Katie Heindel. She's been a guest on the show, and she's truly one of the great people thinking and writing about basketball that there is anywhere. And Katie wrote a story for SB Nation about the NBA dunk contest. And there were parts of it that I'll quibble with Katie personally about because I have strong feelings about LeBron James should have done the dunk contest. But what it was in some ways a profile of Mac McClung, dunking enthusiast, and if I have called him dunking mercenary, although I don't think Katie would like that term very much. But this quote stands out to me so deeply. It was in my mind watching this game. Again, like pretty late at night on my couch on a Sunday evening watching the NBA All-Star game after driving back from Eugene. Mac McClung told Katie in an interview in which he gave her some guidance on how to dunk a basketball. Don't think Katie can get the rim. But if she could, she's got some guidance from Mac McClung. And Mac McClung told Katie, I think everything in life, there's different actions. I always try to make sure I'm doing something out of love. You can do actions out of fear, out of failure, out of ego, out of jealousy, and I try to act out of love as much as I can. That to me is kind of what the NBA All-Star Game is missing. Why can't they just love the damn game? Why can't the thing we love is the best basketball players in the world playing basketball? Too much production, too much sideshow, too much navel gazing, too much concert having, too much everything, just too much. Lead with love. Everything in life involves different actions, as the great philosopher Mac McClung told us. I'm always trying to make sure I'm doing something out of love. I try to act out of love as much as I can. Mac McClung loves to dunk. So you know what that dude does? He does cool dunks. He just comes in and they just like bring him in from the G League and he does some cool dunks and he wins a contest and he says, thanks so much. He does cool dunks because he loves dunking. He loves dunking. He loves to do it. He loves to dunk, and they celebrate him kind of being great at dunking. I wish they would just get out of the way and celebrate All-Stars more. I don't know that you can fix the All-Star game. I think this format actually lends itself to much more likely guys to play more competitive basketball because the game is shorter. There's like there's a target score right away. You can see early on, like, oh, shoot, we're going to lose, right? There's just like a little more incentive to go for it, right? And I think we can get to a point when the games are maybe not like highly competitive, but competitive for stretches and all of that. But we've got to lead with love of the game. Act out of love and love for the players. These are the best players in the world plying their craft. LeBron James didn't compete because of ankle and foot issues, but like, and you know, some other players are not involved for injury reasons, but like these are by and large the absolute best players in the world. Why can't we just love them? Why can't we just watch this stuff and love it? I feel like that's a little bit what has been lost in the way basketball is presented to us by the NBA's largest media partners, is that some of the stuff that makes basketball fun is that we just love it and we love to watch it and we love to watch our favorite players play it. And if we would lead with love, I believe the players in the All-Star game and in these midseason showcase would reciprocate and they would love us back and show us a competitive basketball game because it would be about them first and foremost. I think we've kind of fixed the format. Now we got to fix the presentation to make sure the format is coming to us in a way that it's presented to highlight the stuff we love. Obviously, other people love different things about basketball, and I've said this on the show before, and I'll say it here again. My favorite part about basketball is basketball, and I would enjoy watching more of it. That's going to do it for today's show. Tomorrow's show, we're going to talk a little bit about the two gentlemen from Rutgers, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. I was going to say his good friend. I don't know if they're friends. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, his teammate. I got to see them up close. My first time seeing them up close. Seen them on TV a couple times, but I was in the arena to see them up close. I'll share an in-person scouting trip with you and have a fun guest who is along for the ride with me. Don't miss that one. We got good shows the rest of this week. It might be the All-Star break, but Locked On Blazers ain't taking a break. We're here to rock with you. Come rock with us. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.